So this week's video blog, as I said I would last time, is going to focus on the whole idea of using strategies, because using strategies is the best way to actually include people within the classroom. We're supposed to do something which is called quality first teaching, so you see QFT, sorry, there's the dyslexia, getting the letters in the wrong way around, and quality first teaching in the classroom, because according to the 2014 Code of Practice, every teacher is responsible for the delivery of SEND education, inclusive education within their classrooms. So a very simple strategy, and the one I'm going to focus on, is just having a multisensory approach. It's been very long established and well established that a multisensory approach is important when teaching dyslexics, for example, and I am focusing on dyslexia still. The important thing to know is that any strategies we use in the class don't just help those who we have identified as having a need for certain strategies. They will support others as well. And that is a really important aspect of quality first teaching. So a multisensory approach is something which can be very easily misunderstood. Teachers can think they're delivering with a multisensory approach when actually what they're doing is they're being multisensory, but they're not really enabling the pupils to be multisensory. A good example of that I saw once. I was observing a lesson and the teacher was very dynamic, very active, and he was running around everywhere and doing. The pupils were sat watching and listening. So there was some multisensory element, there was hearing and seeing, but the teacher thought there was a lot of doing in that lesson, a lot of active participation, but actually the pupils were watching him doing it all. And it's very easy for us as teachers to fall into that trap. Also, if you're too sort of like, I'm here, I'm there, I'm doing everything, I'm all over the place, that can actually be very distracting for the pupils, because they sometimes need a central focal point. So it's important we think, when we think of multisensory education, we are very clearly thinking of it from the pupil's perspective. Excuse me. So how can we do this? One of the ways is to make sure that as we write things on the board, we speak. We get pupils actively involved, asking questions, answering questions, repeating things. Repetition is a very important and very worthwhile way of learning. It can embed things. For example, if I'm thinking about something and I'm just thinking of it in my head, I don't necessarily embed that thought. Whereas if I actually articulate it, I find it's easier to hold on to the idea and to make it concrete. And part of that is about the multisensory approach. When you are thinking of it, you are hopefully hearing the words in your head, but when you articulate them, you are physically involved. There's a tactile element. Your mouth is making those sounds, and you are hearing it in a much more auditory way. So articulation is important, and for that we quite often have something we call subvocalization. That is where, as you're doing something, it's almost like muttering it. You say it quietly under your breath. So you might be writing something and you might be saying, I don't know, say it's a difficult word like listen, which has a silent T. You might write listen, so use your spelling voice, listen, as opposed to listen, and you'd write l-is-t-n, and actually say the sounds as you're writing it. That's a very good, subvocalization is a good way of supporting spelling for dyslexics. Other things is to physically get up and about, to move, to be able to engage. I've observed people in science lessons who can really struggle with the written word, but because they're involved in a practical demonstration of practical activity, they are more likely to remember it. They're doing it themselves. If you are trying to explain how to do something to someone and you just show them, they're just observing, possibly hearing. But if you get them to do it, first with a little bit of explanation as they're doing it, then there to just support them as they're doing it, and finally to watch in silence to check that they have actually got it right. That's a much better way of embedding it, allowing them to do it for themselves. So we quite often have TA support where we let the TA do the work. That's not actually helping the child. The TA is there to enable the child to do the work and to gradually become more independent in doing the work. Other examples of a multisensory approach would be to have visuals, not just words as visuals, but to actually have pictures. You can have that where pupils do mind mapping and they use words as well as images while they're mind mapping their work. You can do it where you put something on the board, but as well as putting the words on the board, you put little icons, little, and these days with interactive whiteboards in most classrooms, we can easily download, upload, whichever it is, download images that we can then have alongside the text as visual prompts. It may be that I can't remember what the passage was about, but I saw the picture of the cat and the dog and the lion, and I thought, oh yes, that was the passage about so-and-so. Those little images can just be triggers, and it makes it more multisensory if we widen the way we use the senses. It's not just about using different senses, but it's how we use them. Another example would be if I sit in the car and go on a journey and I'm a passenger, I can go on that journey 100 times, wouldn't be able to drive it. If I've driven that journey, probably with sat-nav, because otherwise I will probably get lost, but if I've driven that journey, I will have noticed landmarks differently. I will have noticed that there was a sharp turn because I had to turn the steering wheel myself. Just the car turning sharply because there was a sharp bend when I'm a passenger is not the same. If I've actually been driving it and I've turned the wheel, I've got a more solid concrete memory of that and peg on which to hang it. The same is true if we go anywhere. I can always find my way back to the car because I will have walked the route, I will have physically done it. So those multisensory approaches help. Another thing about multisensory which is often forgotten is the environment. The environment itself affects our senses. So taking some of the learning outside of the classroom. We've done one of the best bits of fantasy writing I ever got from a group of Year 4 children was when we went over to assembly and there was this deep, deep, deep fog everywhere. So when we came out of assembly, I was teaching Year 4 English straight after, and I said to a colleague who I often co-teach with and do a lot of team teaching with, I said, let's go out, we're doing fantasy next week, let's scrap today's lesson. And we went for a walk along the grounds, and we stopped every now and then and asked people what they could see, hear, feel. They were allowed to touch the grass, which was wet from the dew, and they were looking and they could see as we moved away from the school just vanished into the fog. It was fantastic. And we talked about it. We used similes, we used descriptive language, we used obviously lots of adjectives, but also, as I say, it wasn't just seeing it, it was physically feeling it, that feel of the fog on our skin. And when we went back to the classroom, the children in pairs talked about it, and then we talked about it as a class and everything else. And then the writing for that project was just phenomenal. Everyone had things like it was rising out of the mist, or suddenly, slowly came into view, and things like this. Beautiful phrasing from Year 4 children, very young children, but they had physically experienced it. So that was a really multi-sensory experience, but it was also, as I say, taking them out of the classroom. When we've done rhyme, want to do rhyming couplets, go into the playground and do skipping rhymes, or clapping rhymes, and things like that. And it's real. It's got other pegs on which to hang it. Singing it is another good way of getting things across, with rhythm. Singing, dancing, clapping, all these things make things more, with syllables. Fantastic. The thing where your chin touches your hand on every syllable. So instead of saying, you can clap it, I'll clap with my squirrel here, fantastic, or you can do it where you go fantastic, and each syllable will tap the chin. And that's good because it's very multisensory, and it's multisensory near to the mouth where the word is being articulated. Another example of looking like you're being multisensory when you're not is what I'm doing now with this puppet. I've been holding the puppet throughout. I've got my little squirrel here. I am being very tactile, very physical, and it's helping me to concentrate. But for the child watching, that could just be a distraction. All they're doing is looking at the squirrel, and they're oblivious to the words. They're not being multisensory. They're looking at it. They're not feeling it. I've got this beautiful feel of the rough fur of the tail and the smooth fur of the body. But the child hasn't if I'm using the puppet. So it's about making sure that when we say we're being multisensory, we truly are. Thank you.